The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 1,000 different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and some were made of pure energy. They all sat in their designated seats, watching the humans present their military forces. Commander Jake Morrison stood at the front of the hall. He wore his best uniform, the one with all the medals and ribbons. Behind him, Lieutenant Amy Collins operated the holographic display, showing images of Earth's soldiers and their equipment. The presentation was not going well. "This is what you call elite forces?" asked General Zythorn of the Croyan Empire. He was a large creature with 4 eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. "Your soldiers carry metal projectile weapons. They wear fabric uniforms. They crawl through dirt and mud." The hall erupted with sounds that the translation devices turned into laughter. Species from across the galaxy found it amusing that humans still fought in such primitive ways. Zythorn continued his criticism. "We have energy shields that stop any attack. We have plasma weapons that can melt through steel. We have battle armor that enhances strength and speed. Yet you show us soldiers who paint their faces with mud and hide behind trees. How do you expect to fight a real war with such methods?" Jay kept his face calm, even though he felt frustrated. He had known this would happen. The Galactic Council measured military power only by technology. They looked at weapons and armor and ships. They could not understand why Earth still had vast forests and jungles, or why the most elite human soldiers trained in these wild places. "General Zythorn, our special forces have succeeded in every mission they have undertaken," Jake said carefully. "Against whom?" This question came from Siltara, a being made of living crystal from the Luminari Collective. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "You have fought only small groups of pirates and criminals. You have never faced a real military force." This was true. Humans had joined the Galactic Council only 5 years ago, after a mining ship from the Croyan Empire had discovered Earth. Since then, human soldiers had helped with peacekeeping missions and had stopped smugglers, but they had never fought in a major war. "The Council appreciates Earth's willingness to help," Zythorn said, though his tone made it clear he did not really appreciate anything. "But we must be honest. If the Havrik swarm attacks, humanity should focus on support duties. Leave the actual fighting to species with proper military training and equipment." Amy caught Jake's eye. Her jaw was tight with anger. Jake gave her a small shake of his head. There was no point in arguing with the Council. They had already made their decision. "Earth's delegation understands the Council's position," Jake said. Even though the words fell bitter as they walked out of the Great Hall, Amy pulled out her datapad. "Sir, we just received an urgent message from Earth. The Havrik swarm has changed their plans. They are moving faster than expected. They are heading toward the Kepler sector." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Kepler sector contained 3 inhabited star systems. One of them was Theta 7, a colony world where humans lived alongside Croyan and Luminari settlers. How much time before they reached Theta 7? 2 weeks at most, maybe less. The Council would send their forces, of course. They would deploy their shielded warships and their plasma battalions. But Jake knew something the Council did not know. Theta 7 was not like most colony worlds. 70% of the planet's surface was covered in dense jungle. The human colonists had chosen this on purpose, because they wanted to live somewhere that reminded them of Earth's rainforests. If the Havrik swarm landed on Theta 7, they would learn something important. They would learn that technology was not everything. Sometimes, the jungle itself could be a weapon. "Contact General Pete Hammond at Special Operations Command," Jake said quietly. "Tell him to send the teams, all of them." Amy's eyes went wide. "Sir, the Council did not authorize this. They said we should only provide support. I do not care what the Council said. We have people on that planet. We are going to protect them, whether the Council likes it or not. By the time the Council discovered that Earth had deployed special forces to Theta 7, it would be too late to stop them. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would finally learn why humans had never eliminated their wilderness areas. The Havrik swarm was coming. They were a race of creatures that had been genetically modified over thousands of years to be living weapons. They had acid projectors growing from their arms. They had razor-sharp claws that could cut through metal. Their skin was harder than most armor. They moved in massive groups, overwhelming any defense through pure numbers. On most worlds, the Havriks were nearly unstoppable. They would land, destroy everything in their path, and consume all resources before moving to the next target. But Theta 7 was not most worlds. Deep in the jungles of Theta 7, the environment was harsh and unforgiving. The trees grew so thick that sunlight barely reached the ground. The air was hot and humid, making it hard to breathe. Dangerous animals hunted in the shadows. The terrain was broken by rivers, ravines, and thick undergrowth that made movement difficult. To the Galactic Council, this jungle was an obstacle to be avoided. To the Croyan and Luminary forces, it was terrain where their advanced technology would be less effective. But to the human special forces who were about to arrive, the jungle was home. Jake stood in the communication center, watching the deployment begin. Transport ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Theta 7 system. They were stealth ships designed to avoid detection. Inside each ship were teams of operators who had trained for years in Earth's most dangerous environments. "First teams are landing now," reported the communications officer. "Captain Lee Davis and his unit have reached the surface. They are moving to establish patrol bases in Sector 7. "Good," Jake said. "What about the Havriks?" "Their advance elements landed 3 hours ago. They are pushing through the jungle toward the main colony. The Croyan forces are preparing to meet them in open combat." Jake nodded slowly. The Croyan would fight well. They had excellent weapons and strong discipline. But they would fight the way they always fought, in organized lines with overwhelming firepower. Against the Havriks, that might not be enough. The human approach would be different. In the jungles of Theta 7, Captain Lee Davis and his team disappeared into the green shadows. They did not wear powered armor or carry energy weapons. They had rifles that fired bullets, knives made of steel, and uniforms that blended with the vegetation. They looked like soldiers from Earth's past, but they carried knowledge that was timeless. They knew how to move through the jungle without making sound. They knew how to read the terrain and use it to their advantage. They knew how to become invisible, even when the enemy was looking right at them. The Havrik swarm was about to learn a lesson that the Galactic Council had forgotten. The most dangerous warrior was not always the one with the best technology. Sometimes it was the one who understood the environment well enough to make it his ally. The hunt was about to begin. The stealth transport ship called Nightfall arrived at the edge of the Theta 7 system. Inside the cargo bay, 30 soldiers from the Army's 1st Special Forces Group checked their equipment one final time. They worked in silence, each man and woman focused on the mission ahead. Captain Lee Davis walked through the bay, inspecting his team. He had trained with most of these operators for years. He trusted them with his life. Unlike the gleaming armor worn by Croyan soldiers or the energy shields used by Luminary forces, his team wore simple camouflage uniforms in shades of green and brown. Their weapons were rifles that fired metal bullets, not energy beams. To anyone from the Galactic Council, they would look like museum pieces from a primitive era. 5 minutes until drop, announced the pilot. Surface conditions are bad. Havrik's forward units landed 3 hours ago in Sector 7. They are moving toward the primary settlement. Lee checked his tactical display, a small screen attached to his wrist. The Havok swarm fought like locusts. They overwhelmed defenses with huge numbers and adapted quickly to any threat. They did not use technology the way other species did. They were technology. Their bodies had been engineered over thousands of years to be living weapons. They could spit acid, slash with claws sharper than knives, and their skin could deflect most energy weapons. On an open battlefield, they were almost impossible to stop. But Theta 7 was not an open battlefield. "Listen carefully," Lee said to his team. "The colonists are at Firebase Delta, 12 kilometers from the main settlement. Croyan and Luminari forces are holding the defensive perimeter, but their equipment and tactics are designed for conventional warfare. The Havocs are going to move around them through the jungle, and when they do, those defenses will fall apart." Sergeant Chris Palmer grinned. He was a veteran who had spent years fighting in the Amazon jungle back on Earth. "So we make sure the jungle is not friendly to the bugs." "Exactly right," Lee confirmed. "We have 3 main objectives. First, establish patrol bases along the routes the Havocs will probably use. Second, attack their supply columns and reinforcement groups. Third, make them afraid of every shadow, every tree, every sound in the darkness." Lieutenant Nicole Grant, the team's intelligence officer, nodded. "Classic unconventional warfare. We are not trying to hold ground. We are making the ground too dangerous for them to move through." Lee agreed. "The Council thinks we are primitive because we do not have plasma cannons and energy shields. They are about to learn that humans have been fighting in jungles for thousands of years. We know every trick, every trap, every way to make an environment lethal to our enemies." The transport ship shook as it entered Theta 7's atmosphere. Through the small windows, Lee could see the vast green canopy stretching to the horizon. Rivers cut through the jungle like silver ribbons. Somewhere below, thousands of Havok's warriors were pushing through the undergrowth, confident in their biological superiority. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The drop went smoothly. Lee's team descended on silent parachutes, disappearing into the tree canopy like ghosts. They landed in a sector 30 kilometers from Firebase Delta, deep in territory the Havok's would have to cross to reach the colony. As soon as Lee's boots hit the forest floor, he felt at home. The humidity, the sounds of alien sex, the way the light filtered through layers of leaves. It was different from Earth's rainforests, but not that different. The basic principles remained the same. The jungle was neutral. It did not favor anyone. But if you understood it, if you respected it, you could make it work for you instead of against you. "Patrol base established," Chris reported in a whisper. "We are invisible." And they were. Within 1 hour, the team had constructed a hide site so well concealed that Lee could barely see it himself, and he knew exactly where to look. They used local vegetation, disturbed the ground as little as possible, and chose positions that offered good fields of fire while remaining completely hidden from anyone looking from the air or ground. "Sir, I have movement," Nicole said quietly. 600 meters away, bearing 270. Multiple contacts. Lee raised his optical device and looked through the dense foliage. He could see shapes moving with predatory grace. Havok scouts. Their bodies were covered in chitinous armor that blended with the shadows. There were dozens of them, moving in a loose formation that suggested confidence. They thought they owned this jungle. "Let them pass," Lee ordered. "We are gathering information. I want to know how they move, how they communicate, how they react to obstacles in their path." For the next 6 hours, Lee's team watched and learned. The Havocs moved quickly through the jungle, but they moved in predictable ways. They followed animal trails because these paths were easier. They avoided thick undergrowth. They bunched together when visibility decreased. These were habits formed on their home worlds, where they were apex predators. They had spent thousands of years at the top of the food chain, dominating any environment through pure physical power. But they had never encountered an opponent who saw the environment itself as a weapon. As night fell over the jungle, Lee made his first move. Chris, take your fire team and prepare the surprise on Trail Junction 3. Nicole, I want sensors on every approach route. Nothing moves through this sector without us knowing about it. Rules of engagement, sir? Chris asked. Lee smiled, though there was no humor in the expression. Make them think the jungle is haunted. By dawn, the first Havrix patrol had vanished without a trace. One moment they were moving through the jungle in a standard formation. The next moment they were gone, swallowed by the green hell that humanity had never bothered to tame. When the next Havrix patrol came looking for the first one, they found nothing. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. It was as if the jungle had simply opened up and consumed 15 warriors without leaving a trace. What the Havrix did not know was that those 15 warriors were buried in a ravine 2 kilometers away, their bodies concealed under vegetation and mud. The human operators had struck silently, using knives and suppressed weapons, then removed all evidence of the fight. It was a message, though the Havrix did not understand it yet. The jungle was not empty. It was full of predators far more dangerous than anything the Havrix had ever encountered. Over the next 2 days, the pattern repeated. Havrix patrols would enter certain sectors and never return. Sometimes there would be signs of brief combat. Other times, the warriors would simply disappear. The Havrix commanders grew frustrated. They increased the size of their patrols. They sent out scouts in groups of 30 or 40 instead of 15. It did not help. Lee's team and the other special forces units that had deployed to different sectors were conducting a masterpiece of asymmetric warfare. They never fought fair. They never gave the enemy a chance to use their superior numbers or physical strength. Instead, they used the terrain to dictate the terms of engagement. An ambush would be sprung from elevated positions, giving the humans better fields of fire. Booby traps would channel Havrix forces into killing zones. Snipers would take single shots from extreme range, then disappear before return fire could be organized. Supply columns would be hit at their most vulnerable points, then the attackers would melt back into the jungle. The Havrix were learning to fear the jungle. Every tree could hide an enemy. Every shadow might conceal a sniper. Every step forward might trigger a trap. They were used to being the hunters. Now, for the first time in their species' history, they were the prey. At Firebase Delta, General Jaythorn studied his tactical displays with growing confusion. The Havrix advance had slowed to a crawl. They were taking casualties at an alarming rate, but there were no major battles being reported. Just constant losses in the jungle sectors. How? He asked his aide. How are they losing so many warriors without engaging our main forces? His aide had no answer. Neither did anyone else at Firebase Delta. But deep in the jungle, Captain Lee Davis knew exactly how. His team was teaching the galaxy an old lesson. Technology could make you strong, but knowledge could make you deadly. At Firebase Delta, High General Zaythorn stood in the command center, staring at the tactical display with 4 frustrated eyes. His forces had been fighting the Havrix for 5 days now. The perimeter was holding, but something was wrong. Something that did not make sense according to everything he knew about warfare. Another patrol has failed to report, his aide informed him. That makes 9 patrols in 3 days. Havrix ambush? Zaythorn asked. The aide hesitated before answering. Unknown, sir. There is no debris field. No bodies. No energy weapon signatures. No signs of combat at all. The patrols simply vanish. Zotham's mandibles clicked together, a sign of agitation in his species. This was all wrong. The Havreks fought with overwhelming force. They threw themselves at enemy positions in massive waves until the defenses collapsed. They did not hide. They did not use stealth tactics. Yet his patrols were disappearing, as if plucked from the jungle by invisible hands. What about the human forces? Where are they? Have they engaged the enemy yet? The aide checked his console. We have no confirmed sightings of human forces, sir. Earth claimed they deployed special forces teams, but we have received no communication from them. We do not know their locations or their status. Useless, Zithorn muttered. Just as I expected. Probably hiding somewhere, afraid to fight. But 300 kilometers away, deep in a jungle sector the Croyan forces had marked as impassable terrain, Captain Lee Davis was far from hiding. He was orchestrating a campaign that would change galactic military doctrine forever. Target acquired, whispered Sergeant Danny Hughes from his concealed position high in a tree. Havrek's column, approximately 200 strong. They are transporting something. Large seed pods, probably reinforcements or biological weapons. Lee studied the video feed from Danny's scope. The Havreks were indeed moving heavy cargo. This was a high-value target. Destroying it would hurt their ability to sustain the invasion. Does anyone remember the operation from Burma in World War II? Lee asked over the secure communication channel. The one where we cut enemy supply lines in the jungle? Chris Palmer's voice came back immediately. I remember reading about it. Cut the head, crush the body. Classic guerrilla tactics. Let us do it, Lee ordered. What happened next was a textbook example of jungle warfare, perfected over thousands of years of human experience. The Havreks column was moving along a trail that looked natural. What they did not know was that Lee's operators had spent 2 full days studying every meter of that trail. They had identified every tree, calculated every sightline, and marked every possible escape route. Then they had blocked those escape routes and prepared the killing ground. The first sign the Havreks had that something was wrong came when the lead element stepped on pressure plates, hidden under leaves. The explosions were small and precise. They were not designed to kill large numbers. Instead, they were designed to create panic and force the column to move in a specific direction. The Havreks warriors instinctively moved away from the explosions, just as Lee had predicted. They funneled themselves into a narrow ravine where the trees grew thick on both sides. They thought they were moving to safety. They were wrong. Knuckle Grant's weapons team had been waiting in concealed positions on both sides of the ravine. The sound of automatic gunfire was shockingly loud in the jungle quiet. But it lasted only seconds. Controlled bursts. Aimed shots. No wasted ammunition. Every bullet found a target. Then silence returned to the jungle. The Havreks warriors, confused and enraged, charged forward to find their attackers. Their claws tore at vegetation. Their acid projectors sprayed the trees. But the humans were already gone. They had used predetermined escape routes, moving through the jungle with practiced efficiency. By the time Havreks reinforcements arrived 5 minutes later, there was no sign of the attackers. Only bodies and destroyed supply pods remained. How? Demanded the Havreks brood commander, its voice translator crackling with fury. How do they disappear so completely? The answer was simple, though the Havreks could not comprehend it. Humans did not disappear. They knew how to move through dense terrain without leaving obvious traces. They knew how to use natural features to break line of sight. They knew how to become part of the environment instead of fighting against it. These were skills learned over millions of years of evolution and tens of thousands of years of warfare. Over the next week, the pattern repeated across multiple sectors. Havreks patrols would enter the jungle in force and never emerge. Supply columns would be ambushed from impossible angles. Command posts would be attacked at night by enemies who seemed to possess perfect night vision. The Havreks, for all their biological advantages, had never encountered an opponent who could turn the environment itself into a weapon. "They are in the trees," reported one Havrek survivor, its voice modulator damaged by a bullet wound. "They attack from below the ground. They are everywhere and nowhere. The jungle has come alive against us." At Firebase Delta, Zathon was receiving similar reports from his reconnaissance teams. The Havrek's advance had completely stalled. More concerning, the Havreks were beginning to retreat from sectors they had already captured. They were pulling back to defensive positions. "This makes no sense," Zathon said to Siltara, the Luminari commander who had come to the command center. "The Havreks never retreat. They are biologically incapable of fear. They fight until they win or until they are all dead." Siltara studied the tactical map with her energy-based sensory organs. "Hi, General. Look at the pattern of Havrek's casualties. They are all occurring in areas with dense vegetation, difficult terrain, and limited sightlines. Jungle sectors." "So what? The Havreks are biological creatures. They should thrive in natural environments." Siltara's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been uncertainty, unless they are facing an opponent who thrives in those environments even more. An opponent who was born in jungles and has never forgotten how to use them. Understanding slowly dawned on Zathorn. "The humans. But that is impossible. We have superior technology, better weapons, more resources. How can they achieve this level of effectiveness with primitive equipment?" The answer came in an unexpected way. A message arrived at Firebase Delta on an open communication channel that everyone could monitor. It was brief and direct. "This is Captain Lee Davis, United States Army Special Forces, to all coalition forces. The Havrek's advance through sectors 7 through 12 has been neutralized. We are expanding operations to sectors 13 through 18. Recommend you maintain defensive positions and allow us to continue operations. Davis out." Zathorn stared at the communication display in disbelief. A single human unit, probably no more than 30 soldiers, claiming to have stopped an entire Havrek's invasion force. It was absurd, but the tactical map told a different story. The Havrek's advance had indeed stopped in those sectors. More than stopped. The enemy was in full retreat from jungle areas, pulling back toward open ground where their numbers and physical strength would give them an advantage. "He is not lying," Siltara said quietly. "Look at the data. Havrek's losses in those sectors exceed 300 warriors. Our forces have engaged the enemy exactly 0 times in those same sectors. The only possible explanation is that the human forces are doing exactly what Captain Davis claims." Zathorn sat down heavily in his command chair. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture his species used when confronting something that challenged their understanding of the universe. "How?" he asked again. "How are they doing this?" Siltara pulled up combat footage that had been captured by reconnaissance drones. The footage showed brief glimpses of human operators moving through the jungle. They wore no powered armor. They carried no energy weapons. They moved with a grace and efficiency that seemed impossible for beings without technological enhancement. One clip showed a nighttime raid on a Havrek's bivouac. The humans approached from multiple directions simultaneously, materializing from the darkness like spirits. They struck with precision and violence, then vanished before the Havreks could organize a response. The entire engagement lasted less than 2 minutes. "They are not using superior technology," Siltara observed. "They are using superior knowledge. Look at how they move. Every step is deliberate. They use the terrain to approach unseen. They strike from positions that maximize their advantages and minimize the enemy's ability to respond. This is not primitive warfare. This is warfare refined to a level of sophistication that most species have forgotten was possible. Zathon watched the footage again and again. Each time he watched it, he understood a little more. The humans were not fighting despite their lack of advanced technology. They were effective because they had never become dependent on technology. They had preserved skills that dated back to their earliest days as a species. We owe them an apology, Zathorn said finally. We judge their capabilities based on appearance instead of effectiveness. More than an apology, Siltara replied. We need to learn from them. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened faster than anyone could remember. Holographic representatives appeared in the great chamber from across the galaxy. Some had been sleeping when the call came. Others had been pulled from military operations on distant worlds. All of them looked confused and, in some cases, grudgingly impressed. Commander Jig Morrison stood at the podium again. The last time he had stood here, the Council had mocked Earth's military capabilities. This time, the chamber was silent, waiting for him to speak. Let me make sure I understand correctly, General Zathorn said. His 4 eyes focused intently on Jake. A single company of your soldiers, numbering approximately 30 individuals, has effectively stopped a Havrick's invasion force that outnumbers them by more than 200 to 1? That is correct, High General, Jake replied. They accomplished this using no energy weapons, no shields, no orbital support, and no advanced technology of any kind. We use advanced technology, Jake corrected politely. Night vision equipment, satellite communications, precision manufactured weapons. But our primary advantages are knowledge, training, and understanding of the environment we fight in. Siltara's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been confusion. We have reviewed the combat footage that your forces transmitted. Your soldiers move through terrain that our scanners classify as impassable. They construct defensive positions that are invisible to our most sophisticated sensors. They execute ambushes from ranges where all weapons cannot effectively return fire. How is this possible? Jake allowed himself a small smile. Because we never forgot where we came from, Counselor. Most species, when they develop advanced technology, reshape their home worlds. You eliminate dangerous terrain. You tame your wilderness areas. You create controlled environments where technology gives you every advantage. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. Humanity did some of that too. But we also kept large areas of Earth completely wild. We maintained our jungles, our forests, our mountains. We kept them dangerous and unpredictable on purpose. But why? The question came from a delegate Jake did not recognize, a being composed of floating gases contained in a force field. Why preserve primitive environments when you could make them safe and productive? Because we learned something important in our history, Jake explained. The most effective weapon in the universe is not the one with the best technology. It is the human brain working together with nature. My soldiers are not superior to yours because of their equipment. They are superior because they understand that the jungle is not an obstacle to overcome. It is an ally to work with. The main display activated, showing footage from Captain Lee Davis's helmet camera. It displayed a nighttime operation against the Havrick's position. The human operators moved through complete darkness with perfect confidence. They appeared from the jungle like shadows, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before the Havricks could even identify where the attack had originated. This is what we tried to explain before the deployment, Jake continued. The Galactic Council measures military capability by technology. Level, weapons, armor, ships. But you have forgotten the fundamentals of warfare, concealment, fieldcraft, patience, the ability to survive and fight in environments that are actively trying to kill you. Humans have been doing this since before we discovered fire. Another video clip played, showing Sergeant Chris Palmer's team setting an elaborate ambush. They had spent 6 hours preparing the site, using fallen logs, natural depressions in the ground, and carefully positioned vegetation to create a killing zone that was completely invisible until it was triggered. When the Havreks walked into it, the battle lasted less than 30 seconds. Every shot counted. No ammunition was wasted. "Your soldiers fight like prey animals," Zathorn observed. His tone was different now. Not contemptuous, but thoughtful. "They hide. They ambush. They avoid direct confrontation wherever possible. We fight like survivors," Jake corrected gently. "Humans spent millions of years as both predator and prey on Earth. We learned every trick, every strategy, every way to use terrain to our advantage. We did not forget those lessons just because we developed space travel and energy weapons. We kept those skills sharp because we knew they would always be valuable." The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. For species that had eliminated wilderness from their worlds thousands of years ago, this was a difficult concept to grasp. They had assumed that technological advancement meant leaving primitive environments behind. The humans had proven otherwise. Finally, Siltar spoke. "What is the current status of your forces?" Captain Davis reports that the Havreks have retreated from all sectors adjacent to Firebase Delta. They attempted to establish a new beachhead in Sector 20, where the terrain is more open. We redirected forces to stop that effort. The Havreks are now considering whether to continue the invasion at all. "And your casualties?" Jake felt a surge of pride. 17 wounded, all minor injuries. 0 fatalities. The chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief that the translation devices struggled to process. A force of 30 soldiers had stopped an invasion, inflicted thousands of casualties on the enemy, and suffered no deaths of their own. It was unprecedented in modern galactic warfare. "How is this possible?" demanded a delegate from the Valorian Confederation. "The Havreks are among the most dangerous warrior species in known space. They have conquered dozens of worlds. How can 30 humans with primitive weapons defeat them so completely?" "Because technology is not everything," Jake said simply. "The Havreks are powerful. They have natural weapons, armor, strength, speed, but they have never fought an enemy who understands the jungle better than they do. Every step they take in that jungle is potentially their last. Every shadow might hide a sniper. Every clearing might be a trap. They are used to being the apex predator. We showed them what it feels like to be prey." Zathun stood, which was a significant gesture in council proceedings. "Commander Morrison, I owe you a personal apology. I judged your forces based on appearance rather than capability. That was an error in judgment. A serious one." "Apology accepted, High General," Jake said. "But I think there is a larger lesson here for the entire council," Zathorn continued. "Technology is important. It gives us many advantages. But we should never underestimate an opponent who knows how to use their environment. And we should never mock a species that chooses to preserve wilderness areas. Earth kept its jungles wild for a reason. Now we all understand why." The council session ended with a formal vote. Earth was granted full military autonomy in all operations involving wilderness or jungle terrain. More importantly, 17 different species quietly requested that Earth provide military advisors to train their forces in unconventional warfare techniques. As Jake left the chamber, Amy Collins walked beside him. "Sir, Captain Davis is requesting extraction for his team. They have been in the field for 2 weeks without a break." "Tell him negative on extraction," Jake said. "But send in the relief force. We will rotate teams through on a regular schedule. I want human operators in that jungle until the Havreks give up completely and leave the system." According to our intelligence sources, the Havric's leadership is already debating that option. They are questioning whether Theta 7 is worth the casualties they are taking. Jake nodded with satisfaction. Good. Let them learn what every army in human history learned when they tried to fight in jungle terrain. You can have all the advanced weapons in the galaxy. You can have superior numbers and better armor. But if you cannot see your enemy, if you cannot predict where they will strike next, if every step forward might be into an ambush, then none of that technology matters. The jungle wins. News of what happened on Theta 7 spread throughout the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The story of how 30 human soldiers had stopped an entire Havric's invasion became legend. Military academies across hundreds of worlds began teaching a new doctrine. When fighting in wilderness terrain, especially dense jungle, do not send conventional forces with advanced technology. Send specialists who understand the environment. And if possible, send humans. They remember how to do this kind of warfare. They never forgot. Earth's reputation in the galaxy changed overnight. The species that had been dismissed as primitive, that had been relegated to support roles, was now recognized as the premier expert in a form of warfare that most civilizations had forgotten existed. The Galactic Council had mocked Earth's wilderness areas. Now they were begging Earth to teach them how to use wilderness as a weapon. 3 months after the Havric's withdrew from Theta 7, Captain Lee Davis stood in a jungle clearing that his team had used as a patrol base. The dense vegetation had already begun to reclaim the space. Vines crawled over their old fighting positions. Moss covered the simple structures they had built. In another few weeks, there would be no sign that anyone had ever been here. Seems wrong somehow, Sergeant Chris Palmer said, looking around at nature's work. We fought a war here, and the jungle is already erasing every trace of it. That is exactly the point, Lee replied. We do not conquer the jungle. We borrow it for a while. We use it. Then we give it back and let it heal. The only permanent mark we leave is in the enemy's memory. Lieutenant Nicole Grant approached with her datapad glowing. Sir, you need to see this. It is the official after-action report from Galactic Intelligence. Lee took the device and read through the summary. The numbers were remarkable. The Havric's had lost over 3,000 warriors on Theta 7. The vast majority of those losses occurred in jungle sectors. Human forces had suffered 17 injuries during the entire campaign. 0 deaths. The loss ratio was unprecedented in modern galactic warfare. There is more, Nicole said. The Council has received formal requests from 47 different species. They all want wilderness warfare training. They want to know how we did it. Of course they do, Chris muttered. Now that we proved it works, everyone wants to copy us. Lee considered this carefully. It is not a bad thing. The more species that understand this type of warfare, the better prepared the galaxy will be for threats like the Havric's. But they need to understand something important. You cannot learn this just from reading manuals or watching videos. You have to live it. You have to spend time in the jungle until it becomes part of you. A transport shuttle descended into the clearing, its engines carefully controlled to avoid damaging the surrounding vegetation. General Pete Hammond stepped out, his weathered face breaking into a smile when he saw Lee's team waiting. Congratulations, Captain, Pete said, shaking Lee's hand firmly. You and your team just changed galactic military doctrine forever. We just did what we have always done, sir. Applied the lessons our predecessors learned over thousands of years. Maybe so, but the galaxy is paying attention now. Earth has been invited to establish a wilderness warfare training center. We will be teaching operators from species across the Council how to fight the way we do. Lee frowned slightly. Sir, with all respect, you cannot teach these skills in a classroom. They take years to develop. You need to live in the jungle, Make mistakes. Learn from them. It is not something you can master in a few weeks. I know that, Pete said. That is exactly why we are going to do this right. We are talking about 6-month training rotations. Full immersion in real jungle environments, both on Earth and on colony worlds. We will take the best operators from allied species and turn them into something the galaxy has never seen before. A combined interspecies special operations force that can operate in any wilderness environment. Chris perked up at this. Are we talking about a permanent unit? Mixed human and alien operators working together? That is exactly what I am talking about, Pete confirmed. The Galactic Council is funding the entire program, but Earth will lead it. We are calling it Combined Wilderness Operations Command. Lee looked around at the jungle that had been their home and their weapon for the past 3 months. We will need the right kind of people for this. Not just good soldiers, but individuals who respect the environment, who understand that the jungle is not something to defeat or overcome. It is something to learn from and work with. You will have full authority to select and train personnel, Pete said. The Council wants the program fully operational within 1 year. Over the following months, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. Earth's wilderness areas, which had been viewed by the galactic community as primitive and underdeveloped, became the most sought-after training grounds in known space. Operators from dozens of different species traveled to the Amazon rainforest, the Congo Basin, and the jungles of Southeast Asia. They came to learn skills that their civilizations had abandoned thousands of years ago. Not everyone succeeded. The training was harder than anything most of them had experienced. The Croyan warriors, for all their military tradition and discipline, struggled with the patience required for effective jungle operations. They were used to direct confrontation and overwhelming firepower. Learning to wait for hours in uncomfortable positions, to move slowly and silently, to think like prey instead of predators, did not come naturally to them. The Luminari, with their energy-based biology, found the humidity and dense vegetation physically challenging. Their natural luminescence made concealment difficult. Many of them quit within the first month. But those who persevered discovered something profound. They learned that wilderness warfare was not about technology or physical strength. It was about understanding. Understanding the environment. Understanding your enemy. Understanding yourself and your limits. Lieutenant Kate Spencer, one of the human instructors, watched a mixed team of human, Croyan, and Valorian operators execute an ambush drill in the Colombian jungle. The Croyan warrior, whose name was Shocker, had initially scoffed at the idea of hiding in mud and leaves. He had complained about the primitive nature of the training. Now, after 3 months in the jungle, he moved through the undergrowth like a native predator. He understood. "I see it now," Shocker said after the drill concluded successfully. His mandibles clicked in what his species used as a gesture of respect. "On my home world, we eliminated all dangerous terrain thousands of years ago. We thought this made us superior. But we lost something important in the process. We lost the knowledge of how to be part of nature instead of separate from it. That is what we have been trying to teach you," Kate said with a smile. "Humans are not special because we are tougher or smarter than other species. We are effective in wilderness environments because we never forgot that we are part of the natural world. The jungle is not our enemy. It is our oldest teacher." Word of Earth's wilderness warfare program spread throughout the galaxy, fundamentally changing humanity's reputation. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was now recognized as the premier expert in a form of warfare that most civilizations thought was obsolete. But perhaps the most important changes happened on Earth itself. The preservation of wilderness areas, which had been debated in human governments for decades, became a matter of strategic importance. The Amazon, the Congo, the boreal forests, the jungles of Papua and Indonesia were all designated as protected military training reserves. Humanity would keep its wild places, not just for environmental reasons, but because those wild places kept humanity's most valuable skills sharp. 1 year after the Battle of Theta 7, Major Lee Davis stood before a graduating class of operators at the Combined Wilderness Operations Command Training Facility. The group included humans, Cryoans, Luminari, Valorians, and representatives from a dozen other species. They wore simple camouflage uniforms. They carried basic weapons. They looked nothing like the high-tech warriors the galaxy was accustomed to seeing. You came here believing that advanced technology was the key to military success, Lee said to the assembled graduates. You are leaving with a different understanding. Technology is a tool, and a valuable one. But knowledge is the real weapon. The knowledge of how to move through dense vegetation without making a sound. How to read tracks and signs that others miss. How to use terrain to your advantage. How to be patient, invisible, and absolutely lethal when the moment demands it. He gestured toward the jungle surrounding the training compound. Out there, you learned that the environment is not an obstacle to overcome. It is an ally to embrace. You learned what Earth's warriors have always known. The most sophisticated weapon system in the galaxy is a trained mind working in harmony with nature. From this day forward, you are part of something new. A force that can operate where conventional armies cannot go. You will be the ones called when the mission requires stealth, patience, and skills that cannot be programmed into a computer or built into a suit of armor. You represent a new way of thinking about warfare. The graduates stood at attention, and Lee could see the transformation in them. They had arrived as conventional soldiers, trained in the use of technology and firepower. They were leaving as something different, something the galaxy would learn to respect and, when necessary, to fear. As the ceremony concluded, Lee received a message from Commander Jake Morrison, who was now Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council Military Committee. The message was brief but significant. The Council has formally recognized wilderness combat as a primary military discipline, equal in importance to space warfare and planetary defense. Your training program is being expanded to 3 additional facilities. Well done, Lee. You gave Earth a voice in galactic security that we never had before. The galaxy mocked our wilderness. Now, they are begging us to teach them how to. Lee smiled and looked out at the jungle stretching beyond the compound. Somewhere in that green expanse, new teams were training right now. They were learning the lessons that humanity had carried,